Okay, it's time to have this conversation. What's going on with the X-Men? What's going on with Marvel Tokon? Are they really not about to add more X-Men characters? Because as it stands right now, there's only Storm. And as amazing and as awesome and as popular as Storm is, that ain't enough. Yeah! Let's get into it. So, of course, as you guys know, in the recent trailer that we did a reaction on to the next and upcoming beta that's happening on December 5th to the 7th, that is going to be an all gas, no brakes. Well, let's hope that there's no maintenance, but if they have to do maintenance, I'm sure there's going to be maintenance. Can you imagine if something, God forbid, happened and went wrong and they just let it rock? Like, that would ruin everyone's experience for that entire weekend. What I want to talk to you guys about now is this whole idea of deconfirming characters. And so what I went ahead and did is I actually went on Reddit. I know that sometimes can be a little dangerous, especially when some of the recommendations point you in a direction where it's a lot of not safe for work content. But nonetheless, I did get some good answers aside from some of the ones that I came up with on my own. I really tried to think about it, and there was a few examples that I could think of, but I was like, I'm pretty sure there's more examples out there. So that's why I turned over to the community, and the community gave me some responses. As of right now, when you look at that trailer and you see the X-Mansion stage, what's going on is that in the background, you're seeing the likes of Professor Xavier, Colossus, Beast, Angel, Iceman, Gambit, Rogue, Psylocke, Nightcrawler, and even a few Sentinels. That in and of itself is basically a very small roster of a new game. We can get into that later. But the huge thing here is that everybody's kind of up in the air. They're going all crazy because in a lot of people's opinion, they feel like when they see things like that, it automatically deconfirms a character to be playable later on. However, that's not always the case, and I'm just here to remind you guys that there have been examples in the past where we have actually seen characters that were previously in the background and then brought into the foreground as playable characters. So here's my Reddit post. So like the first example, like you can kind of see right here, this New York stage, and Alex was in the background. So this was Street Fighter V. This is the cameo appearance or the background appearance that I thought of at the top of my head. We could go into some of the responses right here. So this person right here says that Martian Manhunter was a background character in Injustice 1, and after he was added as an additional DLC character, he no longer appears in the background if you choose him. That's actually a really good response to this entire video, because what I'm trying to ultimately do here, guys, is I'm trying to help alleviate some of the nerves, because even though a lot of those characters, and not all of them, because I'm pretty sure like none of us were actually going to expect them to include a playable Professor X, at least in the wheelchair. I mean, even if he was in a wheelchair, that would actually be the most interesting character, and I feel like everybody would shift their attention towards something like that. How are they going to make a wheelchair character work in a fighting game? That would be so sick, and honestly, like, I would love to see that too. More than likely, what I'm really aiming at is I'm sure people were hoping for Rogue, come on, hoping for Gambit, Mon ami, everyone's favorite couple. They wanted them to be playable characters in a game like this, but a character like Psylocke, a character like Nightcrawler even, I mean Beast. Like Beast I don't even think has been playable in any fighting game outside of like maybe what, Mutant Academy? I don't even think Beast has even been an assist before. A game like this where it's like a new fresh take on a fighting game done by a completely different developer and studio gives a lot of opportunity to introduce things that you normally wouldn't expect, because let's face it, the harsh reality, there's a lot of people that are looking at this game as another Marvel vs. Capcom, but it's really not. This is an entirely new game, and the fact that people are even complaining when they see familiar characters like Spider-Man or like Storm or Doom or any of these characters that have previously appeared in other versus fighting games, and they're not doing those moves in this game. They're like, oh, where's this? Where's that? Why does he do this? Why does she do that? And the answer is that, well, this is not Marvel vs. Capcom 4. This is not even Marvel Superheroes 2, or you know what I'm saying? Like, this is a brand new title that is a standalone, and that's it. This is all Marvel going all in on what they're doing, fresh take, Gotta respect it. So this person says, Vikala in Grand Blue was a background character and then a DLC character. Anila from the base roster would also show up in that stage's background if she wasn't selected. Another great example that shows that even if a character right now is shown in the background, that doesn't also mean that they're just completely deconfirmed, and it also means that they're just going to stay in that background. As far as I'm concerned, I think something similar happens in Street Fighter 6, where Guile was in the background, but then he's actually a playable character. He wasn't no DLC, but still, like, he was a part of that main roster, even despite him being a part of that stage in Street Fighter 6. And similarly enough, I mean, say what you will about Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl, but in the second iteration, Mr. Krabs, according to this person, can show up in the background of the Patty Arena stage unless he's playable. I guess at this point, after explaining or sharing some of these examples from the community, I think it's safe to maybe, let's put this out there as an assumption. I think what we can all start to do is now realize, okay, it's a little nerve-wracking, it's a little scary to imagine a brand new Marvel fighting game to not have Rogue, to not have Gambit, to not have Psylocke, to not have a new potential incomer like Nightcrawler or Beast, or hell, a Sentinel not even playable. It's so caked into its DNA within fighting games. Like, those characters are so synonymous with the FGC that it's almost a crime to not include them in a brand new fighting game that is, let's be honest, heavily geared towards competitive fighting game players. I mean, even if you're not competitive with it and you're just a fighting game fan, you know that those characters are completely attached to that identity. You know what I'm saying? The fact that we have examples that show, like, yes, there's characters that can be in the background, but then they can be selectable and playable characters later on, and maybe they just won't be in those stages. Maybe they'll get swapped out. Maybe they just won't appear at all, right? And I'm sure that there's going to be people that might have some bounce back and just continue to provide examples where you have stages with characters that are just solely in the background, and that's it. Actually, one I could think of right off the top of my head is that King of Fighters stage in Super Smash Brothers. You see, like, all these other King of Fighters characters or characters from, like, Fatal Fury and whatnot. They're obviously not playable because Terry's the only one that's playable in Smash Brothers. But I don't think anyone was going to expect anyone outside of Terry when it comes to that. But I'm not going to get too much into that because I'm not going down that rabbit hole. Okay! So before I wrap this video up, I want to get back to a point that I brought up at the beginning of this video. There's a lot of characters that I know, myself included, are almost expecting to see in this game. How is it that at this point in time, we haven't even seen Wolverine? Where the hell is Cyclops? You know what I'm saying? Like, where are these characters? And I guess it's very safe to have that sort of concern and to really want to know, to feel that gratifying, you absolutely know that they're in the game just because they've put it out there and they've shown it. It's like, you hear Marvel fighting game, you're gonna automatically be like, okay, Spider-Man's gonna be in there, Thor's gonna be in there, Doom probably gonna be in there, right? Where's Wolverine? Where's Magneto? Where's Cyclops? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, where are these characters? Like, these are staple characters. Like, they're so popular, not even just with the fighting game side of things, but in the comics too as well. Where are these guys? The other solution or the other recommendation that I guess I want to put out there in the ethos, if you will, just out there in the universe of all things good and all things fighting games, I think at this point in time, it's safe to assume that Marvel is a big conglomerate of a company. They are a big entity where they have a lot of characters, there's a lot of IP involved, there's a lot of connections with these characters, people resonate with these characters, but the fact remains is that when you generalize Marvel and you try to create these games, whether they're fighting or not, and there's so much story to dive into and so many points to pick out from to then include into your project. But the thing that I really noticed is that one of the biggest selling points that Marvel has is not just a few of those individual characters. Some for sure, like I could say right now, Spider-Man is definitely probably one of the most popular, if not the most popular Marvel superhero out of all of them. But next to Spider-Man, it's the X-Men. I guess what I'm saying is, I think that at some point, they're gonna have to make an X-Men exclusive game, whether that's a fighting game, whether that's another type of beat 'em up or an action game. I know the Wolverine game is basically on the come up, and rightfully so, and it's already been confirmed that there's going to be other playable X-Men characters in that game, and it also takes place within the same universe, the Insomniac gamer verse or whatever, with Spider-Man as well. But like when you have an instance like this, where you see the roster of Marvel Tokon Fighting Souls, even though it is a small base roster right now, but the fact remains, Storm is the only X-Men in there. I know it's safe to assume, like, dude, of course they're gonna have Wolverine, of course they're gonna have Cyclops, but are they? Because imagine if they don't. Imagine if they don't. I'm gonna put that out there. That's some real shit you have to ask and say out loud, so that way you have to hear it, and then you have to you have to really just let it process, because there's a possibility that that could be a thing. And of course, I wouldn't want that. Of course I wouldn't want that. I want to see a lot more X-Men characters, but I can't help but remember when Marvel 3 was coming out and they kind of nixed a lot of those X-Men characters, and that was one of the big complaints out of that game. And we don't even have to talk about Marvel Infinite, so I ain't gonna. I think going forward in the future, and I know this is not going to change for Tokon specifically, because this is obviously a Tokon video, but I really think that they should bite this bullet or swallow this ginormous pill. I don't know. Is it an ego thing? Is it an ego thing within Marvel? Because, like, imagine if they're like, okay, let's do an X-Men game. Let's just do an X-Men fighting game. Imagine if they did a versus style X-Men game, but it was just X-Men. And here's the thing. There would only be a select few not X-Men characters that could feature as guests. And I'm talking about Spider-Man, Hulk. You know what I'm saying? So in a weird way, it would almost kind of turn itself into a Marvel versus Marvel, or a Marvel versus X-Men. Or why don't you just do AVX, Avengers versus X-Men? Just do that. Just do that. I can only imagine them sitting around the table and being like, oh, how are we going to have a new fighting game, but we're not going to have Captain America? We're not going to have Iron Man? We're just going to have all these X-Men characters? There's going to be a lot of people that'd be like, sure. But I'm sure if you see all these X-Men characters and then you finally get to see X-Men characters that really didn't get the time of day being playable in fighting games and whatnot, and then you don't see some of their, you know, usual friends, their neighbors, their, you know, it's like their partners. Like these are characters that, whether they're in the X-Men or not, they team up. You know what I'm saying? Like they're within the same universe. They all know each other, and it would be very strange even if you did have an X-Men only type of fighting game and not have some of those other well-known Marvel characters as well. But I just think it would be so funny if it ended up being that way, whether they just did an all X-Men fighting game or they did an Avengers versus X-Men, because let's face it, that would hit, and I know that would get a lot of people excited, and I feel like people would feel more at ease to know that all their favorite X-Men and potentially some new X-Men characters that haven't even made any sort of debut in any sort of new project outside of comic books, because again, it's that recognition, it's that familiarity is synonymous with these Marvel games. And it's just how strong and how impactful and how to this day X-Men sells, dude. It sells. Marvel vs. Capcom rides on X-Men, just like how the Capcom side rides on Street Fighter. Those two just go hand in hand. And at that point, history will continue to repeat itself, because when you look back, look who was a guest character in an old-ass X-Men fighting game, bro. Akuma was in that shit. And it would be hilarious, again, in this hypothetical Avengers versus X-Men fighting game where you will see Street Fighters pull up, because that's just how it goes. And people will eat it up. I know people will eat it up. It would just be so fun to see and so awesome to see. So there it is. That's my pitch. That's a part of this X-Men debacle of them not being included in Tokon. I'm pretty sure, like, guys like Cyclops and Wolverine, and hell, man, Psylocke and Rogue. I mean, dude, there's no way. There's no way that I can't imagine this game being like a small roster. Like right now it's small because of the beta and all that kind of stuff, and it's still being worked on, and there's a lot of potential for DLC. A game like this is very big, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to be buying into it. There should not be any worries on that, but that is truly all of my thoughts on what's going to happen with Tokon, and then what's going to end up happening, or what should happen in the future, just because of, like, when you lay it all out there, bro, it's all about the X-Men. It really is.
Uchi, you're right.
Let me know what you guys think. You think I'm crazy? You think I'm not? If you agree, if you disagree, if there's any other points that I might have missed. I would really love to hear what Maximilian would think. You can't even hide it. It's just, look at Kith, a clothing brand that I can't even afford to look at. They're selling shirts that are $70, $80, sweatshirts that are over $200. They cost more than my fucking car bill. And people are buying that shit. It's crazy, but it sells, and it's because people love it to this day. I wonder what he would think.
Uchi, you're right.
Like, share, subscribe, guys. Make sure y'all taking care of yourselves. Love what you love. Gang, gang.